related, sorry to put you on the spot, but as a psychotherapist,
Mm-hmm.
how do you speak to women or people with identity crises or whatever it be, knowing the Orthodox or the Christian truth inside, but having the struggle with the worldly kind of what you were just saying?
I tell them the truth. I don't have to say this is the Christian teaching, but the truth is that this is just the design of reality. And so the closer that you can align your thinking and your behavior to the true design of reality, the more comfort that you're going to feel. It relieves that dissonance of like, I'm constantly fighting an uphill battle because I'm trying to live dynamics that are unhealthy and broken and upside down and not human. Right. And so when somebody comes to me and they're like, I cannot forgive this person, I'm like, it's not for them to forgive. It's for you. Release the shackles of you're drinking poison and hoping the other person dies. Right. These are, you know, at base, they're Christian concepts, but it's just because they are what is real.
Getting back to where we were, like I told you, the girls are very smart here. So Mireille was like 40 steps ahead of me. When we first started, she went straight to the biblical and scriptural examples. And I was like, don't do it, not yet. No, I'm just kidding. But starting from the Holy Mother of God, right? The Holy Virgin, that's the, you know, epitome of all examples. But what other scriptural examples, what biblical examples, what church examples empower you to know that you have a voice as a female?
I mean, Old Testament is filled with beautiful, beautiful women that we can take example of. I mean, for me personally, I love reading the book of Ruth and how submissive she was and obedient, and how she wanted to become like her mother-in-law and follow her people. And that led her to becoming the great-great-grandmother of Christ. And even Leah, you know, she was okay being second to her sister, and yet she bore Judah, who Christ is from that tribe. And there's so many more. I mean, in the New Testament, we already talked about Mary Magdalene, but the Samaritan woman, how she became Saint Foutini later, and she became also an evangelist. There's so many. I can continue. The 4 daughters of Philip in the book of Acts, how it says that they prophesied. And I think about a conversation we had years ago, Paul. I don't know if you'll remember.
I'm worried now.
No, it's true. And till this day, I think it's because of you that I adore this saint. I don't know if you know Saint Macrina. Do you remember this conversation?
Oh, I love her.
So she is the eldest sister of, I think, like 7 siblings. I'm not sure. And of those 7, Saint Basil the Great, Saint Gregory of Nyssa, and Saint Peter of Sebaste, they're her brothers. So we talk a lot about
power family, man.
Right? Very powerful. Their mother and their grandmother, very, very, very holy people. So anyways, I remember you once passed by me and you told me, you know who you remind me of? Saint Macrina. I was like, what? Who's that? And why? It's like, yeah, because I have 2 brothers, for those who don't know.
They're pain in her. No, I'm just kidding. We love them very much. Okay.
And so I went back home and I read her story, and I saw how influential she was towards her brothers, and how she really, after her mother and her father passed away, was the one who led her family and the one who brought back her brothers who were at some point leading the wrong path. There's so many people, honestly. I could sit here and talk forever about them. And there's so many books that talk about them. But for you to think that there aren't any biblical references or any saints that show leadership or the power of a woman, or just to even just focus on the mother of God and to think, oh, womanhood, how sad, is completely wrong.
Yeah. And the thing about our Holy Mother too, I think sometimes we gloss over the fact that she was the first human being to reach theosis. Like, we're just gonna pretend that the first person to reach theosis wasn't a woman. Like,
Yeah.
you know, it's huge. She's so honored. And like anyways, I could go on, but
No, that's very nice.
yeah.
Did either of you ever grow up feeling that, like, you know, in this church I won't have a place, or I feel like my voice isn't heard? Or is that something that you encounter at all now with youth?
I mean, simply put, no.
Same.
Really?
Never.
So see, maybe we're just complicating things. I feel.
No.
I think, to be honest, it's often from an outside in perspective than an inside out perspective.
Like friends of yours who see the church kind of thing?
Yeah, people who don't really know about Orthodoxy or what this life looks like. It just, there's this, you know, going back to that thing of like, oh, it's traditional, like, you know, there's costumes and music. And,
why are they wearing that?
Yeah.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
I think culture plays a really big role in making people perceive things that aren't true. And sometimes you see things and you kind of tell yourself that this is the rule. But in of itself, there's something called holy tradition, right? What the Orthodox Church teaches. And then there are things aside where, you know, people go their own way, or as you're saying, Paul, like sometimes we fall short of our own weaknesses. And then people see that and they tell themselves, that's what it is. Yeah. But it's not. And like we said in the beginning, we need to follow what Christ taught himself. And Christ honored Virgin Mary. You know, even in praises and hymnology, call her the pride of the human race.
Yeah, but forget even, like, I can't say forget the Holy Virgin Mother, but I'm saying, like, setting aside the example of Saint Mary. Let's just chalk it off. That's because it's, you know, his mother.
Okay.
He honored so much more. I mean, the Samaritan woman, just, you know, even his disciples were like, what are you doing? What's going on here? You know, like, and just honoring females in that time period is crazy. You know what I mean? That by itself is an example, but how he did it was
100%. I mean, when Mary washed Jesus' feet and anointed him, he said that this story will be told. Like, everybody in the world will hear it because of what this woman did.
Can I say something? I think it's very important, and both of you touched on this idea of culture and society. Again, we hear the word submission, we hear the word tradition, paternal, and then all of these like nerves, you know, start you know, to act inside, you know, women when they hear those things from secular society and they come into church and say, oh, look at that, the priest is a male, oh, this guy is a male. So but the idea is that, again, like Olivia touched on earlier, if we understand that we have to go to the lowest point possible, that's what Christianity is about. Like, everything changes. But what I want to focus on is how important the female role is. You touched on it very quickly, but I think it deserves so much more discussion. The idea of the women giving life, that's huge. Like, for example, like when we spoke about Saint Timothy, right? So Saint Paul was telling Timothy, you knew scripture from a younger age because of your mother and grandmother, right? So they infused into him this life. So when Eve is called Eve, right? I mean, she's a life giver, right? And then as not me, but both of you as women, you have this humongous and so important responsibility, much more important than bringing money or anything like that, right? But to shape the soul of a person. And the soul of that person, obviously the males also have a role to play, but not as much as the female role. That soul is of infinite value. $1 is value is $1. 1,000, like, this is infinite value. And then, like, the motherly love, the tenderness, the patience, like the attention to detail, all of these things that you can do that we are not able to do. Even if we try, we can't do these things. So if the male takes on his role, the female takes on that role, like how would society be, right? Like all like the families, which are the building structures, right, of the society, will be flourishing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is such a beautiful illustration of like the absolute freedom and liberation that exists within parameters.
Yeah.
Right? If you do your role, you're so free to do that role.
Yes.
And you can take it to whatever heights, right? But like stay focused on your role, right? And this whole thing of like women being the life bringers, I really love the description when Eve was created of helper, comparable helper, and counsel.
Yes.
And the Holy Spirit, the word counsel is also used to describe him, right? It's the same word actually in the Hebrew and the Greek, that word of counsel, and which is like the honor that is for women is wild. Right. And women, and like, you know, we ask our mother, Mary, for her intercession. She is always in a position of counsel to her son still. She always was and still is for us. And that's an example for women to always
100%.
be in this position of counsel for their families, for their husbands, for their children, for those they serve. It is an incredibly valuable role.
Yes.
And you know, this whole thing of like women can do anything men can. Well, yeah, sure. Right. But you don't need to. You have so much already that you can do that, you know, isn't a man's role.
I think the problem is we see differentiation as weakness,
yes,
or as inequality, but it doesn't mean that. Being different doesn't mean being equal. And I was like, you know, prior to coming, I was meditating on the fact that, you know, if Adam was complete, there would be no need for Eve.
That's
right?
it. Yeah.
But Eve comes from Adam, one flesh, and together they complete each other. But if God decided to create, you know, somebody equal to Adam, well, then I would just be recreating the same human. I wouldn't have somebody different. There's a purpose and there was a need for Eve, or for womanhood, for motherhood, whatever you want to call it, because it was clear in God's plan that this is something that needed to be created.
Right.